On to the next American happening.
Whoa.
What?
Sorry, I thought we just were coming from Biden being half dead.
We haven't even touched that story yet.
All right, okay, keep going.
Biden was caught with classified documents at his rented home in Virginia and his owned home in Delaware, which is the exact same thing Trump got charged with, funnily enough. Now, a special counsel's report was commissioned by Congress, and it returned the finding that Biden should not be prosecuted for two reasons. One of them is boring and technical, and is basically like there is no case against Biden, really. And the other one is he is dying. He's a senile old man. He does not remember that he was vice president. A lot of shocking revelations in there. Any thoughts on that?
I believe it even said like he did not remember the year his son died, and he did not remember the year he was vice president. Yeah. I think like if you've been like paying any level of attention, Biden is cooked. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like I know a lot of Democrats who like really aggressively deny this. Like it's just kind of the media spinning stories. I don't know who's calling the shots, but I am not convinced it's Biden. That guy has not functioning. Anyone with eyes can see this. Like we see it in writing now, it feels very vindicating. But just look at the man. Like look at the guy. Like he can barely stand up.
Listening to Biden talk for the last like few years has never been good, but I've listened to him talk a couple times over the last week, and it's hard to really tell how words are even making it out of his mouth.
There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition. Yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas.
Like, it genuinely sounds like they're just have like fucking electrodes on him, and they're like shocking him to make words just exhale out of his chest cavity.
That guy is he's fucked. It's over. It's Jover.
Like,
it's actually Jover.
This is like when you're at a family gathering or something, and there's like a 98-year-old, and you have to wake them up to ask if they want tea, and like that response that you get is the same thing, but it's confirming sending like $15 billion to Israel instead of getting tea.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
that man heroic doses of adrenochrome just to get him through the morning.
So true. But I was going to say, the whole Biden situation kind of vindicates the idea of a deep state. The supposed chief executive, whose job it is to make day-to-day decisions that affect American foreign policy and, to a lesser extent, domestic policy, is basically in a coma, and the American empire trudges on uninterrupted. Like, nothing has changed.
Also, Biden having documents inside his house, he's not the one reading those.
Well, to be fair, okay, the reason why the technical legal stuff was that like he's president now, so he's allowed to have documents at his house. It's only when he stops being president that he's not allowed to have them. So it's specifically, the case was about, did he have documents between 2016 and 2020 at his house? And the conclusion was yes, but he didn't know.
Hell,
and it wasn't because it was senile. They were like, literally, it's very common for this to happen where people with clearance lose clearance and then just have stuff at their house they forget about. Like, it happens all the time, and they don't ever prosecute anyone for it. So,
to be fair, is that what happened to Trump, most likely?
No, the report actually, I read a bunch of the report. It does say, compare it to Trump directly and say the reason why there's a case against Trump is because when Trump found out about the documents, he refused to return them.
He tried to shred them, right? Or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, and he was also just showing them to random people, which Biden was not doing. The documents Biden had at his house were in his garage, surrounded by, quote, household detritus. So he clearly did not know they were still there.
And stuff like that. Yeah, it was just around junk.
Detritus?
Like, it just means garbage, basically.
Yeah.
I hate fucking
legally.
It was basically
Yeah.
they were like the documents were in a pile of garbage.
Yeah,
And
just say that. Just say the documents were there, surrounded just by household shit, clutter.
That's
You
what
know?
detritus basically means.
That's what they should say. Detritus. That I don't like that word.
Well, I mean, like the guy who wrote the document, I'll say he looks like one of the biggest badasses in the American deep state.
He did get condemned, like a rap on the knuckles from Congress for including all the senility stuff. They were like, that was very unprofessional of you.
Shit.
Yeah, right. He looks amazing.
Yeah.
So you can say detritus. He's allowed to say it.
That's all right. Yeah, but the Congress was not happy with the report, including all the stuff about how the president is like a walking corpse, a zombie that roams the halls of the White House.
Yeah.
I don't think he said that, but yeah.
If what he said might have been worse.
What he said was, quote, the president has been resurrected by a Haitian witch doctor and is now working on a farm in Port-au-Prince.
Makes me think of that Shane Gillis bit. Biden's the first president who could be like punch assassinated.
Oh, yes.
They're like stalk him one, he just dies.
Yeah, at this point you could miss your punch and it would like the breeze of your hand might be enough to knock him over and kill him.
At this point, like showing Joe Biden like a scary photo might be what does him in.
Yeah.
The first president who could be jump scare assassinated.
The first failed assassination that managed to kill the target.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain that if he like ate spicy food next to him, he would be like in bedridden for 3 days.
Did you hear about that? And so there's a couple of President George Bush back in the day was trying to sign a big deal with South Korea, but before he could sign the deal, he accidentally vomited all the spicy food and he had to rush back to the U.S. So he couldn't sign the official deal.
Was that Bush Sr.?
This is Bush Jr. I think. I think
I know there was a Bush Sr. vomiting moment too.
You'd think like a Texan could handle his heat a little bit. That's sad.
George H.W. Bush vomiting incident.
Look,
I'm dropping this link.
Rumor was a single spoonful could kill a white boy.
Yeah, George H.W. Bush vomited on the Japanese prime minister.
Oh, it was Japan. Sorry, is this
Yeah.
one? Yes, this is the one.
This was Bush Sr.
Right.
Brutal.
Yeah. So, anyways, Biden is it's actually Jover. It's never been more Jover, and maybe he'll be like the Queen, where they pretend he's alive for a while, and then they eventually have to admit
So
that he was dead.
Are there people who like? I mean, in your and you don't have to speak on a personal basis, but people around your area, I know, are pretty democratic, right? Or is anyone happy that he's running?
I have known people who defend Joe Biden in a like they're trying to spin him as senile. He was a good VP. He's like a long, like honorable politician. I do not know anyone who is enthusiastic about Biden. There are a lot of people I think are kind of like in the corner where like they do not want to criticize the Democratic Party. Like it's too horrifying to think about like how bad things really are. But I don't know anyone who's excited about Biden in the way people were excited about, say, Bernie, or frankly are excited about Trump right now. Like that's kind of the big difference in this election in my mind is like everyone voting for Biden is doing it with a gun to their head, and everyone, for the most, not everyone, but a large portion of people voting for Trump are so excited to be voting for Trump.
But
That is true.
unlike Canada, where we don't have a way to get rid of the leader, there is an actual way to get rid of the Democratic leader. Why aren't people using that?
Well, there is
Because the alternative means that Trump gets in, right? Like they can't really get rid of him. Like running against an incumbent is very, very, very difficult.
Beyond that, there actually is the 25th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which allows the vice president to just like remove the president from power if they become incapacitated. But the thing is, like, Kamala Harris will also eat shit and lose, and also is really not aware of where she is or what's going on.
Yeah, I was gonna say Kamala's not like much more with it than Biden
Yeah,
is.
I don't know.
She is on God's most perfect pharmaceutical cocktail.
I got it. Kamala's a weird spot because I feel like if they left her sober, she would be doing better. But now that she's probably on some, pharma cocktail,
Pretty uninformed.
Here's the thing,
go back.
You're making a fundamental error here, Spencer, where you're assuming her aides are drugging her up. I think her aides are begging her to stop taking drugs, as
Yeah.
opposed to Biden, where they are injecting him with
Sorry,
God
what are
knows
you
what.
just talking about?
Kamala Harris, the vice president. Shrey, look up Kamala Harris coconut tree speech after this episode.
Everything is in context. My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Look up Kamala Harris school bus. Like, it's,
Yeah, there's a lot of Kamala Harris appearances where she is just barred out.
Elizabeth May barred out, or like
No, I mean like Xannies. She's a Hyperborean trap star. It's fucked.
Kamala Harris ex Sosa, hate being sober. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, she's like Elizabeth May has the tendency to go on drunken tirades.
yeah.
Kamala Harris is like on Xanax or something. She's incoherent.
Well,
she's
from
delirious.
She's from California, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I think running Biden, like literally the first time they ran Biden, they were just like, oh, this is just like for one election. He's not going to be back, but we just need to make sure that we're like gold standard to get rid of Trump. And they're fucking shooting this guy up every day to keep him rolling. He's running again. His polling is
dismal.
like a historic low, from what I gather, from like anyone.
Yeah, he's at the worst. I think he has the worst polling of any president at this point in their presidency ever.
In
Yeah.
defense, though,
He said,
the red wave was supposed to come, but he stopped the red wave.
Biden, like the red wave was stopped, but it's not because of Biden. Like Biden fundamentally just isn't a leader. Like he's not there enough to be a leader. Trump isn't really there either, but at least they're just bombast and showmanship. He can be a leader. Like he can be a figurehead. Biden is like this frail, sad figure. There's nothing to rally behind. It's like he's an empty signifier.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
generally speaking, when you grow up and you grow older, you always think about back in the day how your politicians were better and everything, and less corrupt and whatnot. But I've always had like this reverence that the American president was the most powerful person in the world, and I think that's still true to a larger extent. But do you think Do you think Biden? I mean, Trump already changed the image of the president. Do you think Biden being this old changes the image of the president as well?
Well, I think. Sorry, actually, go ahead, Harrison. Your opinion is.
I was just gonna say, I think when people talk about like America being in decline or like we're entering like a multipolar world, I think like no small part of that is the like nonsense around the American presidency. Like without trying to be too like we need to bring dignity back to the office. Like the show that was Trump followed by the like just sad affair
The
that is Biden.
hangover.
It really does. Like the hangover. That's a beautiful way of putting it. The hangover that is Biden really like it really does kind of undermine America's presence on the global stage. Like it's just a very, very sad sight. I mean, would you agree with that?
I would agree with
Like you
that.
said, you've had a reverence for the American president. Like, would you agree with like, do you feel that reverence towards Biden now? Like, because I certainly don't.
I mean, yeah, it is like a very perfect symbol, isn't it, of what's happening? Of like an older guy who's starting to slur his words and forget things.
I feel like people at least used to be able to kind of. I feel like people would grow disillusioned at some point about the workings of everything and all of that. But I feel like the Trump to Biden back to back has every single young person like. The second they gain any political consciousness, try to follow politics at all, they are immediately just like America's cooked. Like there's nothing going on up there. There's nothing for me to rally behind. I feel like people would, be young, be ambitious, and like try to, think of things politically, get more involved. But now there's just, why would you?
Well, I was going to say that, like, I think Biden has significantly damaged the public perception of the presidency as this all-powerful, all-important office, as, like, exposing the farce of the American presidency that it has become since the 1960s and 70s. Like basically post-Kennedy, a lot of, I won't say a lot, but LBJ and Nixon both were convinced that Kennedy was assassinated by the United States government. They were both big into that. I know. Was the the Church Commission was the one that was like the official story, whichever the official story was. I know LBJ was highly skeptical of it. Nixon, the assassination of Kennedy was a major part of his personal paranoia against the CIA. He, in the Nixon tapes, he repeatedly refers to that Kennedy thing in the context of like the CIA, where it's implicit that he believes he will be assassinated if he actually does anything. Yeah. I think that has been a factor in reducing the actual real power of the presidency, where people who have actually held the office since then believe that if they do anything, they are in real physical danger. And then also, since like the neoliberal turn, the presidency has been consciously turned into sort of a figurehead of American power, as opposed to an actual active government office, where like the American government exists to steward its own gradual dismantlement more so than any grand project. And now anyone who pursues the presidency is doing so out of a personal desire to be president, to have like the mantle of president, like Trump and Biden did. I think Trump and Biden ran for president because they wanted to be called Mr. President, right? Trump, in his endless pursuit of fame and glory, ran for president. And Biden has been trying to be president since like the 1980s, and now finally has done it, but in a very like Shakespearean tragic sense, has accomplished it at like the worst possible moment.
But like, I mean, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is what Biden's like signature policy, wasn't that one of the largest investments ever in the history of the U.S.?
Was the Inflation Reduction Act something he did or Congress did?
I was going to say, like, how involved is Biden really in that at this point? Like, how we've all kind of agreed that Biden's not really calling the shots. There's, some Capitol Hill intern pulling his strings.
I think this is kind of what I always say, where it's like, oh, no matter who is the president, whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden, they're going to have to make a decision based on like the pandemic or something like that to reduce inflation, and they're going to go over to like the neoliberal market economist guys, and they just throw it over there because that's what they know. And then McKinsey or whatever will come back and say, oh yeah, you actually just need to fuck the workers over harder. And then they'll just do that. Like, no matter who it is, the overall economic policy is going to be relatively similar. Now, Trump did have some protectionism, which is actually really interesting, but it still wasn't nearly as wild as one could have hoped. It didn't really shake much up.
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act, yeah, it was an act of Congress, and it was proposed by like a congressman from Kentucky or whatever. The only things the president has done significantly since like the 1970s has been like kind of vanity project executive order stuff, like Trump's statue garden being an extreme example.
The IRA is based off the Build Back Better plan, which is where all the conspiracies also came around, the Build Back Better thing that Biden was
that's
pushing.
True.
But it's from the Biden's original plan. But I will agree with what Uncle was saying here, where yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at the actual plan, it's more or less throwing it at very specific industries and then letting private partners deal with it however they need to deal with it, which is probably going to some consultants anyways.
Yeah, this is very different from when the American presidency actually did stuff. This is, I think, like this is a lot of expenditure, but it's still part of the broader neoliberal project of offloading government responsibility on private industry and overseeing the gradual privatization of everything. Whereas, like, before the neoliberal turn, the last not neoliberal president, Richard Nixon, was threatening to kill grocery store owners for raising prices and stuff. Things used to be very different.
Yeah, how that guy, his response to inflation was just like, if a union demands a raise, I will kill you. If employers raise their prices, I will kill you. And suddenly inflation stopped.
But since the neoliberal turn, the office of the presidency has fundamentally changed to being basically the American constitutional monarch.
And to think that they framed and kicked Nixon out of the White House for that.
Yeah, actually.
Unreal.
Yeah. It's a damn shame. Yeah. I gotta say, Nixon, no matter how much I hate Nixon, a real one. Like, truly a real one. I think everyone can can relate
we all
to that.
Yeah.
You know, love him or hate him, you have to love him.
Exactly.
He's
exactly.
such an interesting figure. Like America's last real president, like a president who did anything important.
Yeah, and like one of the last guys where you can look at him and like you could feel power, you know? Like you saw someone, you're like, damn, that guy, like, he could go hard in the paint.
He's also such an intensely tragic figure because of his insane paranoia, which eventually took him down.
Yeah.
It's what an interesting character. Anyways, we'll wrap up this episode with the Putin interview.
Wait,
our
okay,
international
I was
segment.
gonna summarize that one with, I think the Dems are getting way too cocky with Biden. They like got away with like just by the skin of their teeth last time, and they're going in and they're like, hey, it worked last time, let's do it again. I could not fathom. I could not fathom. It barely worked when all the cards were in their favor, and now they're playing like, yeah, they got pocket aces and they worked running Biden like through. Now they're running Biden, but they have like a 2-7.
Like what's the alternative though? Like who else are they going to run? There's no like real promising heirs in the Democratic Party. I mean, maybe Gavin Newsom has a chance. Like he's young and he's charismatic, but like I said, I don't think he wants to be involved in the shit show that is this election.
There's a third running.
Okay.
Look, here's how Bernie can still win.
RFK. RFK.
Wait, please.
Is that RFK's theme music I hear?
It's RFK with a steel chair.
Like, ironically, have you guys heard RFK's motto?
No.
Oh yeah, no, it's incredible. It's so good.
Do you want to do the honors?
It's the America that almost was and yet may be.
That's a great.
That's Kino. That's Kino.
Yeah, it's pretty peak. Like he really does have a very like compelling kind of middle of the road thing going on. I mean, if you ignore the ties to Epstein and the anti-vax stuff and the fact his voice sounds like he eats gravel for breakfast.
I've come here today to announce my candidacy for the Democratic nomination.
But like, yeah, like I just don't think anyone really wants that. Like Americans fundamentally are not interested in this middle of the road American greatness thing. They just want to see the other party bleed.
Yeah.
And he can't really promise them that. And because of that, I mean, no third party's ever going to have a chance in America, but I don't think that changes here. Well, people particularly want to see the other party bleed.
Oh, yeah. He's the only one who's proposing universal healthcare right now. So
Interesting.
Just saying.
What? Biden's not doing?
No, he's not. Of course not.
No, of course.
I figured he was like he had something in his pocket, not like universal healthcare, but something like pushing that way.
The only thing Biden has in his pocket is Werther's Originals. All right. Let's move on to Sherry and I watched watched an interesting video recently. Tucker Carlson sitting down with Vladimir Putin to discuss Putin's justification for invading Ukraine. If you've been on the internet in the past few days, you've definitely seen references to it. Although I'm not convinced anyone but me and Shrey have watched the full interview, because there's some weird shit at the end that I haven't seen anyone else mention.
I think it was just so out of whack. I mean, even the beginning was out of whack, to be fair. Like, it was just a very odd interview.
I honestly kind of defend the beginning because, like, I saw a lot of takes. It's like, oh, he's talking about this, and that, or whatever, and it doesn't make any sense. Having watched the interview, Putin is making this, like, ultra-nationalist and, I guess, imperialist argument, but the points he's bringing up are all, like, related to it. Like, he mentions, like, when Russia embraced Eastern Orthodoxy, which is... And he believes in this, like, pan-Orthodox identity. Like, that's, like, an important part of why he believes Ukraine is a fake country. And he brings up, like, this and that event because he explains that's why Ukraine has this national identity. Their annexation to Poland, Lithuania is why they developed a separate nationality from Russia. So it all kind of ties together. But, like... And it's all more or less historically accurate. I remember having some issues with it at the time, but I can't remember exactly what he said that was wrong. But generally it tracked. The thing is that it's like, even if all of what he said was true, Ukrainians identify as a different nationality now. So it's like, it's a moot point. Yeah. And then also, like, still doesn't justify invading another country. like
Here,
the historical argument.
Let's give a quick TLDR for anyone who hasn't seen it. But yes, Vinny?
You have to understand, all wars are defensive. You're never attacking someone. You're never attacking new territory. You're only defending your future territory. All right.
Well, Putin does try to. He does get into modern stuff like NATO expansion,
China
and China and stuff like that, and America lashing out in its dying days of unipolarity and stuff like that. But a large crux of his argument is the idea that Ukraine is like a fake country, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Which is like neither here nor there, really. I don't think it's really relevant to his actual argument. He does talk about like U.S. brinksmanship and NATO expansion, but really not for very long. I think there's kind of like this narrative that this was all in reaction to NATO expansion. And as Tucker points out, Putin did kind of say that at the beginning, but Putin doesn't really seem to think it's that core an issue anymore, at least going from the interview. Right now, he does go into denazification for a while, and Canada gets a shout out.
Yeah, we knew it. We knew it.
He goes on for a while, talks about he accuses the U.S. of blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, which I'd like, fair enough.
Probably.
As an American, I take credit. We did that.
He talks about the coming multipolar world, the declining American power. Then shit gets weird.
Even before it gets weird, he talks a lot of good about China. Like a lot of good about China. It's really funny because in the beginning, Tucker threw him a question about how like why isn't the West more scared? Why is the West so scared of Russia when it should be scared of China? Right? Like,
he's
the
like,
West is not scared of China.
Putin was like, the West is terrified of China, Tucker. What are you talking about? That was a fun. Yeah, I forgot about that moment. I think actually Tucker is even worse. He's not even like they're not that scared of China. He's like the West is not afraid of China, but is afraid of Russia.
Yeah.
Why is that the case? And Putin's like, what are you talking about?
But also, even then, like later on, he talked like Putin goes off on like how China's not aggressive and not trying to. It doesn't have an aggressive philosophy in foreign policy, which is fascinating.
Yeah,
because he like threw Tucker back kind of in a weird place.
I did hear like the first 2/3 of the interview or so, and he was like, yeah, like, we've been neighbors with China for forever. They're chill.
Yeah, that was his take. It's like we have a 1,000-kilometer border and no issues so far, which fair enough, right? China and Russia haven't really had any reason to beef since Russia annexed Vladivostok like 110 years ago or whatever.
Please do tell how it gets weird. I must.
Oh, it gets real weird. Okay, so where it starts to pivot is where Putin starts to pull out pan-Orthodox identity, where he's like, so I'm Orthodox, and the Ukrainians are Orthodox too, and there's like this Christian Brotherhood thing. But Tucker radically misinterprets the statement and starts spewing the most Protestant-brained shit I have ever heard, and Putin is just sitting there flabbergasted. Like, first Tucker retorts with like, well, if you're a Christian, why are you engaging this offensive war? Which is like, fair enough. That's a pretty normal
my
question.
point from earlier.
Yeah, but then Tucker follows it up with, well, Putin's answer actually is that it's actually a defensive war. They're defending Russians in Ukraine.
Perfect. Taken right out of my textbook, all right?
Yeah, so then Tucker's like, so if you're a man of God, do you see the supernatural acting on the world around you in world politics right now? And Putin is like, what? Yeah, I feel like Tucker, I don't know what his background is, but I have to assume he's like evangelical or Mormon or something, because that is so accidentally like a Protestant versus old world Christian kind of issue, where like I feel like old world Christians have an almost deistic view of God as like creating the world and lording over it, but not like showing up to print Jesus's face on your toast. As opposed to a more Protestant, holistic God is everywhere all the time sort of idea. But that really took Putin aback. He was really confused by it. Then Tucker starts to just start rambling about like, well, when is the AI empire going to be established? And Putin was like, the AI empire? So then Putin had to rescue Tucker. He's like, oh, you mean like Elon Musk and stuff? Yeah, that's like whatever. Like, we have to establish a working relationship with Elon Musk, yada yada yada. With latest genetic technology, we can build a superhuman, yada yada yada.
Yeah, that's not public knowledge.
That was so fucking weird. So yeah, I started laughing in the middle of that. Let me re-explain that. Tucker is like, what about the AI empire? Putin is like, oh, you mean Elon Musk. Something Neuralink, yada yada yada, business relationship with Elon Musk. And then he says, where was this? Due to specialized genetic research, it is now possible to create a superhuman. And then he just goes back to talking about Elon Musk and Neuralink.
Did he just dips into Metal Gear there for like 30 seconds?
I was like, what the I rewound it, and I was like, what the fuck is he talking? Latest genetic research, we can build a superhuman? And then like later on he talks about steroids, so I have to assume he means like we can make like really good athletes for the Olympics or something, but like I don't know.
Is he like threatening the West with like Superman or something?
It was weird, and that's why I'm not convinced anyone has seen this video, because why is no one talking about Putin admitting that Russia is building superhumans?
What do you think of doping scandals at the Olympics were? Those are just testing grounds.
That was phase one.
That was all made up.
But the fact that he talks about steroids, but when he talks about the superhumans, he mentions specifically genetic research.
Yes. Yeah.
So, what is happening in Russia?
Did you see the part where Putin was like, "Oh, the Hungarians should also look into a"?
Oh yes, he advocated for Hungary attacking Ukraine. Yeah, actually, that was in the historical justification part where he was talking about Ukraine being like a fake country. He was like, when I went on a road trip from what was then Leningrad to what is now Belgrade, Serbia, or whatever, I drove through Western Ukraine, and the signs there, they were all in Russian, not Ukrainian. In Western Ukraine, they were all in Russian, and they were in this language I didn't recognize. And then I saw these guys wandering around in three-piece suits and black fur caps, and I asked who they were, and they said they were Hungarians. And then it leads into this idea that like Ukraine has stolen land from Hungary and should like give it back.
I like how this, instead of like giving me a larger question, it just sounds like Putin on a road trip just harassing tourists.
Now, in general, when it comes to speaking about the old world, maybe I'm just too much of a new world, or even more so too much of a Canadian to think this way. But I have such a hard time relating to this ethno-nationalism and ethnocentrist ideals everyone in the old world seems to have. It just feels wrong and weird.
Yeah, I guess that is the just solely versus what's the other one? Just sanguinis or whatever it is, where it's like the idea of nationhood from like being in a place versus like
blood.
Being descended from people in that place. Yeah, I mean, a lot of his argument, he seemed way more concerned with the idea that Ukrainians are like not real than the idea that NATO is provoking him or something.
Like, I'm more convinced that the Russians are imperialist after watching this video.
I think, Bennett, when we first talked about this, you said that the primary point of the invasion, I figured it was just going to be, like, oil shit in Ukraine and resources and, like, energy concerns. And you said, I think it's just because Russians see Ukrainians as Russians. And I was like, I don't know if I buy that because, I think there's got to be a little more to it, but maybe not. Maybe you just... Maybe I tried to outmaneuver shit and I just got lost in the sauce.
Yeah, well,
there's something to be said for the fact that, like, what does Putin have to lose at this point? Like, he's in a position where he has enough power where he can fight a war for a reason like that.
Oh, think about
that's like his reason doing for no reason, but like, I think that he has a level of control over the country where if he wants to fight a war, he can make a war happen. And right now, he wants to fight a war for this ideological nationalist
Yeah.
old world ethnic relations type reason that the new world just really has a hard time wrapping its head around.
Yeah.
I guess it's weird for us to understand, but I guess Russians have always considered Ukrainians to be just Russian, and he does explain what, like, the whole point of his long-winded historical explanation is justifying that belief, like why he believes Ukrainians are Russians. And
That just
yeah,
kind of
it's
makes
like,
sense that it's just like an old world type war.
yeah.
Yeah, like listening to him talk about, oh, since the 800s or whatever, all the way till now, explaining all that history. I'm just like, what's the point? They don't feel Russian now,
Yeah.
and that's the important part. But clearly, that doesn't matter to him. He sees it still as, okay, well, these are lost Russians who have to come back home because they're being poisoned by the American ideal or whatever.
He does go into a lot of personal stuff where he's like, I had this conversation with this guy, which is like dubious, right? Like, we don't know if that's actually true. Where he's
His
like,
conversations with Bill Clinton.
yeah, he talks about his
yeah.
conversations with Bill
that-
Clinton. He also talked about a conversation he had with Volodymyr Zelensky,
Yep.
where he was like, Vlad, man, your grandfather fought for the Red Army. Why are you buddying up with Nazis right now? And you're Jewish. And
He did really push into the idea of the deep state, eh? Like, he went off
he did mention the Golden Billy. He like offhand mentioned an obscure Russian conspiracy theory as if it was like factually true, and like Tucker didn't even push him on it. He was just like,
I looked into that a little bit. The Golden Billion is like, there's the conspiracy theory that the world's elite are conspiring to concentrate all the wealth in the top 1 billion people in the world, which is very, very funny because, a lot of American spirits, like the elites are like the top 100 or whatever. No, like the Russian idea is it's the top 1 billion. But you also can sometimes, from what I understand, I could be wrong about this, but from what I understand, people just refer to the Golden Billion as like the affluent of the global West, like just the top 1 billion wealthiest people in the world, like the top 15% or whatever that is.
I guess that makes sense, but yeah, I hope that's what he was referencing, as opposed to like the idea like the Vatican controls banks or something.
The latter would be much funnier.
That's
Like,
true.
the thing Tucker kept pushing him was that, okay, so you're basically, Mr. Putin, you're saying that the president has no control anymore. It's different department heads who are running the U.S. And Putin seemed to agree with us. Like, yeah, for some reason.
I think Putin kind of humored Tucker there, but he seemed sort of. He literally said, "I don't know how the U.S. works internally." Like, he does say that it's the American political system is very confusing to me and to Russians in general, and I don't really care how it works internally. So I guess he probably passively believes in the idea of America being controlled from the top down, but I don't think it really factors that much into his decision making.
Right, yeah.
So as a more kind of broad, overarching kind of thing, when I saw that this happened, I was immediately brought back to Ben Shapiro versus Destiny, where I looked at something and I was like, this is about to be the most insufferable video in history. And this was kind of like a step up from there because it had the Putin wild card, but I wasn't gonna entertain Tucker Carlson and Putin. I looked at that and I was like, yeah, you guys can watch this and I'll just catch up later. Did he come across like Putin? Was he a chill guy?
He seemed totally fine. Honestly, Tucker seemed hysterical compared to him. If I'm
Tucker's also just, he is hysterical. I hope he had that fucking face on the whole time.
Yeah, he did.
He did. Powerful waspy neuroticism.
Yeah, he did have his trademark confused face on most of the interview. But he was always trying to steer it back to American internal issues, and Putin was like, "Yeah, I don't really understand that stuff. I don't care." Anyways, here's why. Here's how Prince Rurik III received a letter from the Hetmanate of Crimea, and then that was part of why Ukrainians aren't real or whatever.
It was wild when he brought up papers to explain every single.
Yeah, he
funny.
He brought up primary sources, and he was like, "I'm just gonna give you these, Tucker. You can read them or throw them out or whatever you want to do with them." But
that's so hype.
He gave him a binder.
Yes.
Full of stuff. It was incredible.
I think Jamie, bring out the papers.
Pull that shit out.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
interesting to say for sure.
I love to imagine like Tucker opens it all up and it's all in Russian.
Oh, it almost certainly is. Honestly, if you're gonna watch it, just skip to like an hour 45 minutes in, and like that's like the schizo part. That's like the most enjoyable part of the whole interview.
When the meds are wearing off on both sides.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, this video just doubly confirmed to me that Russia's imperialist. And like Ukraine's like needs more help in that kind of way. I'm not sure that was what the intention was. I don't think it was, but I feel like it solidified my thoughts on it overall.
Well, I don't know. I feel like I don't think we owe Russia our support generally.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I feel like it's like most political arguments where you're not really trying to convince the other side. You're just trying to like,
Convince the audience,
affirm to your own side that you still got it.
Well, do you think that in that case that it did convince, I guess, Republican Americans who watched Tucker Carlson that Russia is justified?
I don't know. I feel like Tucker Carlson fans were hoping for Putin to go in more on like Western culture war stuff or like American internal politics, but Putin seemed utterly uninterested in engaging with any of that stuff.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. When you mentioned the thing about like Tucker asking him like, do you think there are like demons operating in the world?
Yeah.
Like my first thought was like that was Tucker trying to bait Putin into saying like, oh yeah, they're called the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah. Like, yeah, there are demons and they're all being controlled by Joe Biden.
Yeah, something. Yeah. But Putin just seemed confused. He was like, supernatural forces? No.
Let's go back to discussing princes from the 12th century.
Well, the supernatural forces was right before he launched into the Russians have superhumans they're building, so I don't know. Putin wasn't all there at the end either.
Or he was, and he's warning us.
Maybe that was a coded, like, he's warning Ukraine, like, you guys better surrender now or I'm unleashing Red Sun Superman.
We're gonna see Space Marines like storming Kiev in March.
We're gonna see, what's that guy from Baki who climbed out of the nuclear silo that had like only 1 nanometer long ledges, and he just went up the side on that. That's what they're breeding in there.
Oh, there was Shrey, did you catch the part where he kind of like coded threatened the West with like nuclear annihilation?
I know he talked about like, that there's nuclear, like, nuclear stuff, right?
He was talking about how like in the 2000s, or the 1990s, the United States was building an ABM system to counter Iran, and he asked if Russia could join on that development thing, and the Americans were like, no, you cannot, with the implicit like statement that like, because this is also to defend us from you. And then Putin was like, yeah, so we've developed since then missiles that can beat the most advanced anti-ballistic missile systems. Oh. So watch out for that.
That's awesome.
I will admit I will agree with him on one thing. The American politics doesn't make sense to me yet, and I don't really understand the American system.
I think it's deliberately designed to not really make sense. Like, it's deliberately obscure. Every single party has a completely different process. Everyone claims each other's party's processes are anti-democratic, and like it seems like it's designed to like do that.
Ben, I think you and I were talking about this before. Isn't it really messed up how certain states go before others? Like how certain geographical areas just
like how Iowa and New Hampshire like have outsized influence in American politics because they get to go first.
Like why is it on the same day?
We're talking about the country with the Electoral College here, like
yeah, but the Electoral College and the Senate were like for a specific reason, which was to like entrench Southern planter power as like a overriding political force. But like Iowa and New Hampshire going first in the primaries is like just doesn't make any sense.
It's to counterbalance the Southern planters.
I also love how like. You have certain states going first, but you also have certain states going last, which means you can have, like, you just have election cycles where it's not even like, oh, you voted, but it didn't end up actually being meaningful. It's like, no, your vote never got there. Like, it was never counted. The election was already decided by states that had gone on previous days.
You Canadians just don't understand that the states are pawns in a game played by much bigger powers.
You're so fucking
So true. Wait. I have some insane breaking news. I'm posting it in the channel.
Whoa.
So we were talking about so Alexander Dugin is the founding father of the ideology of Eurasianism. So Alexander Dugin just uploaded a clip of what is this even? One of my Serbian friends sent this to me.
Mate, I'm trying to listen to you speak while also pay attention to this.
Fake news, no wonder no one trusts you. The United Nations filled with suckers.
And it's way too much. How did you figure this shit out while all the rest of this was going on? How do you multitask like that? Look, I'm not gonna lie, kind of goes crazy though. Kind of goes crazy.
Mr. President, old Kanye, new Kanye.
I didn't know Trump had bars like that.
Anyways, now we're just watching we're just watching meme videos now. Well, let's wrap up this episode.
Oh, I still had one more whole thing to go into.
Oh,
all right, go ahead.
Yeah, which was just the fundamentally funny Apple VR. I figure I watched MKBHD, who he's New York, right? Is he New York?
I have no idea.
And then Casey Neistat, who's like a New York core New Yorker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I figured it fit in with America, and I gotta say, absolute schizo shit. All I could think about was like John Carpenter's They Live, where the guy puts on his sunglasses and all the ads are just like consume products and stuff like that, obey, and all of those. And everyone's just like, dude, it's so true. We can, if you really think about it, you can totally see through all the messages, and then proceed to put on their goggles, which are made by the biggest corporation in the world. And they're like, this is where it's at. This is the future. I want the biggest corporations to curate what I see all the time.
See, the thing is, I think this is... I think I'm publicly debuting my theory of PSYOP marketing, where I think the lesson of the first Trump campaign that companies have internalized and incorporated into their marketing schemes is that you can win by looking really dumb and just saturating the news with stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a person wear one of these things. That I live in Canada, so maybe they just aren't available here yet.
Yeah.
But third world nation.
Yeah. So, but I don't know if people commonly see people wear these things in the U.S. But I swear I've seen that.
You might see like San Francisco, New York City. Maybe you catch one at some point. But there's also not.
But
there's not that many of them in existence. They only made 80,000 of them or something.
They got released 2 weeks ago.
I swear I've seen dozens of videos of people doing stupid shit while wearing these.
It's only been 2 weeks or so.
A guy wearing one of these and rushing onto the court of an NBA basketball game, or a guy wearing these and playing slot machines in public or whatever. I think Apple is orchestrating these scenarios that are designed to make people be like, what the hell is going on? And stoke sort of a viral outrage just to to boost this the normalization of this project.
I don't even think it's Apple. I think it's just the nature of the content algorithm, where something new happens, there is an obscene way to go about doing it. And then you get more views by being that obscene person and just shocking everyone into watching your video.
I like to imagine that it is social media managers who pay a very, very close very, very close eye to any trends, and then work very hard to amplify the ones that seem to be working in their favor.
Yeah.
I don't think it's it's produced out of nothing. I think that it's a seed of something natural, and then they cultivate that the moment it seems like it might be helping them.
It's definitely that.
So I guess what I really wanted to communicate was that they said the front is glass, The glass is covered by plastic. I forget what the term is right now. And I believe with Apple Care it costs $500 to replace. They can be scratched incredibly easy, and it ruins the whole experience, and the cameras can't work properly with it. I'm not saying assault people. Luckily, the headsets are not people. You got keys in your pocket, something like that. Look for where the cameras are, and then really quick we'll make sure that no one's wearing them in public, alright?
I mean, I have more mixed feelings on it in that, like, I think, like, VR has the potential to be much, much worse than smartphones. But I also think, like, my hope is, I think there's, like, probably, like, less than 10% chance of this actually happening.
Yeah.
But my hope is that, like, smartphones, by the nature of being, like, a small square that you have to look at, force you to compress your attention into a very small space. Like, if you want to use your smartphone, you have to take all of your attention and put it into this little square. VR offers the potential for a computing experience where you can use a computer in a way that is not compressing your attention, but uses the space around you and does not remove you from the space around you. Is that how people are going to use VR? No. They're probably just going to like plug into the metaphorical or literal goon cave and like cut themselves off from the universe.
Yeah.
But I think unlike smartphones, it does offer this potential for technology to re-enter the world in a more natural, more pro-social way. But it just remains to be seen if there's any chance of people picking up on that. Like, I hope we could kind of learn from like how disastrous smartphones have been and hope to make this next paradigm a little bit better. But it's too early to say if I should even be hopeful for that. And my optimism might just be like the fact that I don't want to imagine how bad it's really going to get.
I don't think it'll do that because, like, I know one of the reasons why Google Glasses failed was that this uncomfortable feeling everybody had where talking to someone with Google Glasses felt like they might be being recorded at any moment.
Yeah.
And this is just going to take it to the extra mile, eh?
Yeah, I think there's like a part of that, but I also think there's been 10 more years of smartphone use between Google Glass and now. And the level that technology is integrated into people's lives is much, much greater, you know? Like the people who could afford to buy Google Glass did not grow up with smartphones, like the people who can afford to buy Vision Pro now. It's a completely different paradigm. Like the people who bought Google Glass, like remembered a time before the internet. Like they probably went to high school when there wasn't internet, you know?
Well, I think we need to look at VR as like in terms of broad social forces. I guess at an individual level, you could choose to use VR pro-socially as sort of like AR integrated into the world around you. But we have to think about like what would make the most money, like this pro-social AR setup or like an addictive goon cave that has you trapped in at 24/7. Like how smartphones, like you could use them pro-socially to just text and call your friends and nothing else, but like a multi-billion-dollar, if not single-trillion-dollar industry at this point is entirely focused around getting you addicted to your smartphone and scrolling through an app endlessly.
Yeah, I feel like VR will offer a lot of the same shit. It will just become, we want people as addicted as humanly possible. The lawnmower simulator will go crazy.
Like, yeah, I kind of like the idea that, like, if I happen to live very far away from my friends, like, it would be cool if VR could actually meaningfully recreate a social experience of, like, getting together and watching a movie or, like, playing a game together in some way that, you know, isn't perfect, isn't ideal, but is better than hanging out in a Discord call, right?
Yeah.
But that said, you know, I think the, like, VR is some place you use to, like, hang out with your LLM-powered girlfriend is, unfortunately, like, the most plausible outcome.
That's awesome.
I remember you talking about how the idea of the biggest difference between us and the generations yet to come, or Gen Alpha, I guess, what we talked about last episode, is that Gen Alpha will think it's very normal to have friends who are AI. And
I'm completely, like, I'm totally sold on it. If not Gen Alpha, 110% the Gen after Gen Alpha. Like,
I tried one of those AI friend things, and that, like, it just felt terrible.
Yeah, now you know how your grandparents felt when they got a smartphone. Like,
But it's weird because like in AI, like I mean I don't know about you guys. Growing up, I had a ton of friends who I've never met in real life. You know, they're all on various video games or whatnot, mainly through Civ 5. Because a big Civ 5.
But sure, you also know everyone, so your experience might not be universal.
But my point is like I had those friends I never met, I never knew. I only knew them as a little tag, which came up whenever I played a game with them, and we used to play on Skype together before Discord. At the end of the day, the interactions would be the same as having an AI friend, right? Except maybe less accessible and better voice sounding.
Except
For
the
now,
AI friend is 100% available, will never upset you, can like adapt to your personality, has no purpose besides algorithmically adapting to be like as pleasant and compliant and make you feel as good as possible. Like it's like there's a 100% chance that like kids are gonna get hooked on this shit.
yeah,
Like, when
I
we're,
would
like,
say
as adults, as like fully grown, emotionally developed adults, we can recognize like, oh, this is a little uncanny. But imagine if the technology was 10 times better. Instead of talking to a fully grown adult, it's talking to like a very insecure 12-year-old.
yeah,
Like, how are kids not going to get hooked on that?
Right, okay,
yeah,
so
I agree.
100%
I do think
accessible.
that AI friends are pretty much going to be a replacement for therapy.
Oh, 100%.
I think that that's kind of a little scary, fucked up part, because part of the whole, I think, restorative power of therapy is the fact that you are away from the constant content, everything. The world is allowed to be slower and you just chat with one person about things. I think a lot of the restorative power of therapy is just having a mandated friend who's always there for you in that one-to-one slow-paced environment. But now therapy is going to be part of the faster-paced environment, the hyper-positivity loop, and just like, yeah, I think it will be bad for therapy.
I know people who've used ChatGPT as therapy, and they were very happy with the results they got.
You watched me try
That's
to
crazy.
do it, and
You
I
know
couldn't.
people who use ChatGPT as therapy and it helped them.
Like they needed help.
You do
with certain
too.
situations. Pardon?
We had articles in the print house.
What?
Now we're doing that.
When did that happen? What article was this?
This is I guess I can hopefully remember to add a bleep, but articles.
Oh,
Was
What?
that
I
That
don't
was
remember
therapy, but he was definitely talking about things with ChatGPT to like develop thoughts.
Yeah, he was
Well,
talking
that's-
through his anxieties with ChatGPT.
I was talking about
Yeah.
someone else.
It was
but-
definitely potentially therapeutic, but I don't know if like I think calling something therapy is a pretty intense signifier to add in a lot of situations.
Maybe.
He was feeling the guy I'm thinking about, he's feeling very nervous about something. He needed help. And he
Yep.
asked ChatGPT and it gave him advice and help and he felt a lot better afterwards.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, I do know that there might be for the same reason there might not be AI lawyers, there might not be AI therapists, just from the perspective of like, if an AI accidentally gets someone to kill themselves, there's a liability issue. That like an individual therapist could be held accountable and prosecuted, whereas like with an AI, it's a lot messier. I do know ChatGPT has already talked someone into killing themselves, so we'll see what happens.
But it doesn't have to be called therapy for it to be therapy, right?
I guess so. I mean, people could
Yeah.
even if it was technically against use policy, people could trick ChatGPT into therapizing them or something.
Therapy is an insanely broad umbrella. Like you're completely right about that.
I think
we should wrap it
Yeah.
up there. We'll see what happens. AI has the potential to radically transform things in a way people might not anticipate or be ready for, but
yeah.
life
Still
will
not
trudge
good at
on.
making recipes, so you know.
AI empire is coming.
As all right, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for
Bye.
listening.
Thanks
y'all.
for having me
Yeah.
on, fellas.
Bye.